Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And once again, the Philadelphia Phillies have won a baseball game. Ranger Suarez didn't have his best stuff, but still a 10-5 victory. We're going to break down everything from last night's sloppy baseball game. And then we'll also preview tonight's game, the final game against the Mets in this home and home, 2 games each place type of split series. I'm calling it a 4-game series. Can the Phils win all 4? Well, they only need to win one more tonight, and then they'll complete the 4-game sweep, as I'm calling it, of the Mets. And also, I have something that I've been thinking about for a couple days with this team. I'm finally going to say it. How special are they? I think it's pretty darn special, this team. We'll get into all of that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm Connor Thomas, your host. Thank you so much for checking us out. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube if you haven't already. All of that great stuff really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies, so I appreciate it. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We'll talk more about Game Time later, but let's talk about the game last night because the Philadelphia Phillies win again. They double up the Mets, a 10-5 victory, and it was 10 runs on 10 hits, which shows you there's probably a little bit more going on when it comes to ways to get on base. The Mets walked 5 batters. They had 2 errors. It was not the cleanest game for either side. So it wasn't your typical 10-run outburst for the Philadelphia Phillies. In fact, they scored 1 run in the first 4 innings, but then the 5th inning, 4 spot, 6th inning, 2 runs, 7th inning, 3 runs. And that stretch right there was just where they put it out of the Mets' hands. Honestly, the Phils were down 2-1 going into the bottom of the 5th inning, and they just exploded. And that's why you should never worry about this team. Legitimately, I've talked about it before, but this team is, until you're down 6 runs in the 9th inning, and even then, maybe not, but until that, you're not really out of any baseball game. You just aren't with the way this offense can put things together. Ranger Suarez, once again, found a way to win. Went 5 innings. He got the W. He's 8-0. The Phillies are 9-0 in his starts. He only has 1 game where he did not receive a decision. He allowed only 4 hits. He allowed 2 runs, but both of them unearned. So that ERA for Ranger Suarez is down to 1.37. He walked 2, which is uncharacteristic of Ranger, but again, he didn't have his best stuff, only struck out 3, and it was weird conditions to start the game, right? Let's talk about that while I bring it up. Major miss by the Philadelphia Phillies last night. There was this weird band of heavy rain that I could see rolling in from my apartment up here in Fishtown. I'm about 3 or 4 miles north of the stadium, and I looked out my window 5 minutes before game time, and I'm like, yo, I can't see the tops of buildings out here. It's going to be tough conditions to start this game. Now, from the 3rd or 4th inning on, it really turned into a solid night, a little bit cold, a little breezy, but drier. The first 3 innings, though, were a mess. Johan Rojas on the first batter of the game gets a line drive out to him. He doesn't see it well. It hits off the heel of his glove. He had another one he couldn't corral later in the game that I think was more on him than the weather because it had cleaned up by that point. Not worried about Rojas' defense, but it was hard to throw the baseball. It was hard to field the baseball. You saw it from both sides. I think he should have delayed that game to 7:30. You could have done a 40 to 50 minute delay. You would have skipped all that rain. You would have played a clean game. Ranger Suarez still could have started, but whatever. Doesn't matter. The result's still fine for the Phillies. 10 runs, a victory. We don't mind that one bit. Before we talk about the offense, right, because it wasn't a huge Ranger Suarez night, let's talk about the work of the bullpen. Spencer Turnbull. I know there are some people upset with the way he was used in that final game of the Marlins series where he only pitched 1 inning. And last night, he was exactly what you expect him to be in the bullpen. He gave you 3 innings. Now, it wasn't his best work. He allowed 5 hits and 3 earned runs, but those came in the final innings of work. He was pretty darn good. They came in the 8th. And then they got him out of there. 6th and 7th were perfect for, not perfect, but perfect as perfect can be for Spencer Turnbull. I liked what I saw out of him last night. I don't like to give the home run that he did, but I mean, you look at it and say, oh, okay, he saved some guys in the pen. Sir Anthony Dominguez comes in, gets a perfect inning of work in the ninth, and that game's over. He's starting to build a little bit of confidence too. To get through that game with only 3 pitchers is big, considering that you got a complete game shutout from Nola the game before. The bullpen's now pretty darn rested, and it's a good time to have them rested as you continue to play the slate of divisional games. Right now, so heading into the stretch where they were going to play 3 against the Marlins, they were going to play 4 against the Mets, and they still have 3 coming against the Nationals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I said that I wanted 3 against the Marlins, which didn't happen, but then 2 out of the Mets series, at least, maybe 3, 2 out of the National series. I was looking at probably 7 and 10 games, right? 4, 3, 3. Yeah, so I was looking at 7 and 3. Right now, the Philadelphia Phillies have won 5 of their first 6 games against these teams. It's a pretty darn good start. They could go 6-1 to start it, and basically guaranteeing themselves that they're going to win at least 7 of these games and meet that number that I had set for them. So really great stuff. It's always fun to beat the Mets too. Remember when Keith Hernandez had those comments 2 years ago about the Phillies fundamentally this, that, and the other thing? I don't like the way they play defense. They don't do it. Like, come on, bro. How dumb do you sound now with how good the Phillies are and where the Mets have gone since that? And I'll tell you what, something that people don't want to admit, the way Keith Hernandez was talking about it at the time, he was probably right, but the Phillies just went on a run since then. They've turned into an outstanding team, both offensively and defensively. So good work by the Philadelphia Phillies last night and continually to keep making Mr. Hernandez eat his words. Let's talk about the offense. Kyle Schwarber, 2 for 4. His average, he's up to 225. Like he's starting this season, I should say, the way you'd expect him to play basically an entire season. Keep it in the low 200s, hit bombs, see a lot of pitches, get on base. He had another walk last night. Love that. JT Realmuto back in action, 1 for 4 with an RBI. I told you he was the guy to watch in the game to maybe do something special. Alec Boehm, 1 for 4 with a run scored. Told you he was a guy to keep an eye on. Nick Castellanos, 1 for 4, also a hit. So if you picked all the guys I like to have big games, they didn't really have big games, but if you picked them all to get hits, you cash that. So another reason to list the Locked On Phillies. But the real guy who powered the offense for the Phillies in this game, by the way, Christian Pache, 2 RBIs in the game. Good work by him and work in left field. But Bryce Harper went 3 for 5 with a home run. That home run in the first inning, really, after you give up a run in the top of the first, an unearned run by Ranger Suarez because of that misplay by Yohan Rojas out in center field, that error, Harper just answers with an opposite field home run in the rain. There's nothing that can slow this guy down. It's not rain, not snow, not wind. And if he starts to get hot, I tweeted it out, that's like Thanos getting the final stone in the Infinity Gauntlet. The Phillies, if they get Bryce Harper hot, this team goes to a whole nother level of quality baseball play. Remember, they're doing all this without Trey Turner, a guy that was hitting well over 300 and was almost leading Major League Baseball in hits. Like, yeah, this team is unbelievable. And the Mets, frankly, just aren't that good. They didn't have a lot. They had 9 hits in the game, which tells you that Ranger Suarez didn't have his best stuff, but it's just not enough to keep up with the Phillies. They can't seem to do it. Coming up, we're going to talk about whether or not they can get that done in the series finale as the Phils look to win all 4 of these split home and home series games. I'm just going to call it a 4-game series because it's easier for me. I don't have to explain it every time. And a 4-game sweep would be awesome to say of the Mets. It's still 4 wins either way, but it just makes it easier for me. So we'll talk about that coming up. And we'll also discuss whether or not there's anything to worry about right now with the Phillies, or at least as we look at the final game of this series. I don't really see that many issues with this team. I don't. And you're facing a guy on the mound today in Jose Quintana. We'll talk about this. A gettable pitcher. I don't see any way to slow this train down right now. If you're an opponent of the Philadelphia Phillies, especially an opponent of the Philadelphia Phillies that is the quality of the Mets, which is not a terrible team, but not a great team at all either. We'll get into after, because I don't know, ho-hum, they won another game. That's just kind of par for the course for the Phillies at this point. On to the next one. Let's keep this train rolling. Let's go from 31-13, 18 games over 500 now in the month of May. Let's try and go for win number 32, shall we? We'll talk about it coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. First, though, it's time to talk about game time. Maybe you want to go to the game tonight in Philadelphia. All right. It's not sunny, but it should be nice enough. You're not going to get wet tonight going to the game, no rain or anything. Well, if you want to get last minute tickets, Game Time is the best. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. So that makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So maybe you're listening to this episode at 5:30 p.m. You're like, I could get tickets. I could be at the stadium in 30 minutes. We could go see the Phils win another baseball game. They're the best team in baseball right now, right? And not just best record. They are the best team in baseball right now. You want to go see them, and you want to use Game Time. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I mean, it's super easy. They've got all these kind of deals, flash deals, where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event you want to go to. They also do concerts, comedy, theater, all sports, like all that great stuff. Zone deals, you can save even more when you choose a section like Game Time Choose Your Seats. Shows you the all-in pricing. You get the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. You can get views from your seat before you even purchase the tickets. Lowest price guarantee from Game Time, their Game Time guarantee. If you find a seat in the same row and section for less, they'll get you 110% of the difference. Not just 100%, 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They're all great reasons to use Game Time. It's the best place to get tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. And guess what? You download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Tell you something else that's basically guaranteed at this point. The Philadelphia Phillies to play good baseball every time they take the field. It might not be like the cleanest baseball, but they're going to play well enough to win more often than not. They're winning more than 70% of their games so far this year. That's a crazy winning percentage. Over 700 on the winning percentage for the Phils to this point. It just shows you why they're so darn good. And they've got another chance to go out there and win tonight. Phils are taking on the Mets. It's a 6:40 p.m. game, right? Normally these Thursday games are day games, but because they had the day game on Tuesday in New York, I guess they wanted to have a night game today. I don't know. It's weird. But either way, 6:40 p.m. first pitch. I already told you. Jose Quintana towing the rubber for the Mets. Taijuan Walker, the former Met, on the mound for the Phillies. Now, Walker, this has not really been talked about much because of how good everyone else has been in the rotation, but he's 3-0 this year, and he got a late start. Remember, he won 15 games. I don't know how he does it, but he just goes out and records a win a lot when he pitches for the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, part of it is he's got a great lineup and great defense behind him, but 3-0, a 4.82 ERA, which sounds awful when you compare it to the rest of the rotation. But when you compare it to the rest of the pitchers in baseball, it's not bad. A 1.34 whip shows you he's been keeping guys off the base pass. He's only thrown 18 2/3 innings, but the guy gets results. 15 strikeouts. You'd like to see that number up a little bit more. I'd like to see him go back to his splitter a little bit more than he has at points this year. But and 4 home runs in those 18 2/3 innings is the one thing you worry about with Taijuan Walker. Other than that, I mean, he's been solid, and that's the reason why the Phillies had no problem moving him back into the rotation once he was healthy. Quintana, on the other hand, is 1-4 win-loss record, which isn't a pitcher stat, but it's a pitcher-adjacent stat. Here's definitely a pitcher stat. 5.44 ERA. He hasn't been that good this year. The whip, 1.55. He's allowing a base runner and a half an inning. So we'll just basically look at that as 3 runners every 2 innings. With a team like the Phillies that hit so well with runners in scoring position and runners on base, that's going to be a problem. He's allowed 46 hits in 41 1/3 innings pitched. So it's not even like he's walking the park. He's just very, very hittable. And he only has 28 strikeouts in those 41 1/3 innings pitched. So I know he's a lefty, which is normally the tougher handedness to face the Phillies, but he just hasn't been good this year. Also, 6 home runs allowed. The Phillies should be able to take advantage of Jose Quintana, and I expect guys to stay hot. Bryce Harper can hit lefty-lefty, but Alec Boehm, I'd expect another hit tonight. JT Realmuto, another hit tonight, I'd expect. I mean, Nick Castellanos, maybe. I said extra base hit for him yesterday. I was incorrect on that, but he did get a single. Maybe he runs into one. I don't know. Look at the righties to get things going for the Philadelphia Phillies. Maybe Rojas goes out there and has one of those, like, oh man, I messed up a couple things yesterday type of games, and he has a hit or two. Wouldn't that be nice to see him just have another one of those nice games that proves to you he's growing as a major league hitter? Whatever the case may be, whoever you believe is going to come through for the Phillies. And those are the guys that I look at as having big games for the Phillies potentially tonight. They're just a significantly better team. The Mets can't hold the candle to the Philadelphia Phillies. There's no one I even look at when I see this Mets team and say, you got to worry about that guy. You got to worry about this guy. I mean, Pete Alonso is always a good hitter. He's got 9 home runs on the year. Hasn't really burned the Phillies too much in this series. I mean, Starlin Marte is a guy, like when you see him walk to the plate, he looks kind of like Adolis Garcia from the Texas Rangers, just jacked. Like I would hate to pitch against that guy because he looks like he can hit the ball 800 feet. But I don't know. Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, none of these guys have really made huge impacts in this series because the Phillies are just that good pitching-wise to take them down. Now, this might be a day where you need to get a little bit deeper into the bullpen because Taijuan Walker is not as stretched out as the other guys. The good news is you've used 2 pitchers out of the bullpen over the last 2 games combined. So, I don't know. Everyone's fresh. It's totally good to go. You don't get an off day between now and the weekend series with the Washington Nationals, which we're going to preview in tomorrow's episode. But really what I'm looking for tonight from the Phillies, I want to see them play much cleaner defense. And the other thing, okay, we didn't talk about this. We need to talk about this because people are going to be like, oh, you're ignoring the base running. The base running was abysmal in last night's game. Nick Castellanos hits the ball to right field, and it's all in front of him. It was clearly not a double. He tries to stretch it into a double, gets thrown out by a mile. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why he attempted to go to second there. That's a mistake completely on the player because that play is entirely in front of him. He sees that. It's the right field. When you're running up the first base line, you make that decision. That was kind of a tough throw, I guess, from right field, but it was not a ball that you should have ever gone to second on. And he did without thinking twice, and he got thrown out by a mile. And also JT Realmuto on a big hit by Bryce Harper, a big double by Bryce Harper. He gets thrown out by like a billion miles going home, running through a stop sign from Dusty Wathan. Now, Kyle Schwarber was on base right in front of him, and Dusty was kind of, if you're watching on YouTube, he was given the go sign. He was doing it with his wrist rather than the full swinging arm that you see when they're sending guys around third, while also holding up his other hand to tell JT to stop. So complicated signals, but you're a decade-long professional player. You're the catcher. You're supposed to be like the cerebral guy on the team. And JT never does. For all the base running mistakes the Phillies make, it's never JT Realmuto. Last night it was. And that was miserable. So I want to see them play just like a much cleaner game. The defense last night, I kind of put on the weather early on in that game. The base running, I can't put it on anything but the players not running the base as well. And the Phillies, this is a sticking point for them. If there's anything that I would point to and I say they need to do better at this, base running is the top one. Now, they're 31-13, even with running the bases like they have no idea what they're doing sometimes. So it's not hurting them that much, but there could come a time where it does. I want to see them get it under wraps before it gets an opportunity to hurt them. So better base running tonight is a goal. Better fielding tonight is a goal. Hopefully Taijuan Walker continues to lower that ERA and settles in even more and makes you feel comfortable about the depth in this rotation. Because right now, when you look at this rotation, it's a 3-headed monster with Wheeler, Nola, and Suarez at the top. But when you get to 4 or 5, those are the games where you're like, okay, offense needs to carry a little bit. I think we could get to a point, because I'm higher on Taijuan Walker than I think most Phillies fans are. I think we could get to a point where Taijuan Walker is in the conversation of not quality of pitcher of those guys, but you feel very comfortable when he takes the mound. If you can get 4 guys like that, maybe you have 5, Christopher Sanchez continues to develop, we're in a great spot. So a lot of stuff to watch for in tonight's contest. And I'm excited to get after it. I'm excited to watch this baseball team again. They are must-see TV for the time being and hopefully for the remainder of the season. But coming up, I've been wrestling with this thought for the past couple days. I'm ready to vocalize it. I have something to say about how special this Philadelphia Phillies team is. And I'm going to give you an opinion, my personal opinion, but one that I fully believe in as to the answer to that question as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. You can't lift the trophy, but how about you make some money? How does that sound? Does that sound good? Well, right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. You're about to see the conference finals in the NBA and NHL, and they're finishing out the semis right now, but there's a lot of really good players, really good teams. Also, it's not just the playoffs, baseball's ongoing. Why don't you just continue to bet the money line on the Phillies? They win every single night. Go ahead and check them out. FanDuel has so many great bets, so many prop bets. Any way that you want to bet a game you're watching. Also, you got the PGA Championship going on out in Louisville at Valhalla. You want to bet on golf, you can do it. They got everything. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count, or everything in between count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So, what is this that I'm about to say? I hate to do this. I really do, right? This is the burden of being someone who hosts a podcast or talks on the radio, does sports talk for a living. Because if I was saying this to like one of my buddies at the bar, it's just out in the ether and gone forever. That one guy remembers it, I remember it, and we move on. He might not even remember it because none of my friends listen to me. But my point is, when I say this, I worry, not that I'm jinxing the team, but that I'm getting out ahead of myself. But I trust my eyes and I trust my gut. If you listen to this podcast, I don't go through a lot of advanced statistics. I don't go through a lot of numbers. I watch the game. I trust that I've seen thousands and thousands of baseball games in my life and have evaluated them well and have played the sport at a high level. And I trust my gut. And my gut is telling me when I watch this Philadelphia Phillies baseball team that they are the best Phillies team I've ever seen, right? We'll say that, right? When I say the best, I mean the most talented in my lifetime. So I'm 29. I was born in 1994. So anyone who's older and wants to say, oh, the 93 team, the 1980 team, the 1906 team or whatever. I'm talking in my lifetime. I didn't see those teams play. I'm familiar with them because of highlights and videos and everything like that. But in my lifetime, this includes the 2008 championship winning team, the 2009 World Series appearing team, the 2011 102 wins most in franchise history team. This includes the 2022 team that went to the World Series, the 2023 team that went to the NLCS. This includes all of those teams. This team's better. Like when you just look at the talent level on this team, in my opinion, they are better. I understand that 2011 team was stacked. Rotation was good. Lineup was good. All-star caliber players up and down it. I'd be willing to argue that 8 of your 9 starting players when this team is healthy are all-star caliber when they're at their best. Brandon Marsh, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, all can be all-star caliber players. You may see a couple of those guys as all-stars this year. I mean, we know Turner, Realmuto, Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos. Those are all guys that have made all-star teams before. You're just looking at a team that is really, really special. Not to mention how good the rotation's been, how good the bullpen's been. I know that 11 team had the 4 aces. Roy Oswalt wasn't that good with the Phillies, and Cole Hamels didn't have that great of a year right there in that particular season. I mean, compared to Halladay and Lee, who were outstanding, and Halladay, lock Hall of Famer, obviously, first ballot. I'm not saying anyone on this team is like lock, first ballot, Hall of Famer. No. But I'm saying in a season, when I watch this team, I have never seen a Philadelphia Phillies team that is so complete, so consistent, so focused, so talented as this Philadelphia Phillies team in 2024. Now, what does that mean? Am I saying they're going to win the World Series? Am I saying they're going to win the division? Am I saying they're going to win 110 games? I'm not saying any of that, right? Things happen. Injuries happen. Playoff series are weird. That 2011 team, which is probably the second best team I've ever seen now that this team exists, they lost to the Cardinals like immediately. We know how that goes. We remember that story. So I'm not guaranteeing any level of success. But when I look at talent, this team is the most talented baseball team I've ever seen play in Philadelphia. Just is. I feel that way. You can feel free to disagree. Let me know in the comments if you buy that or not. But that's how I feel. And I'm normally I'm not trying to be cocky or anything or toot my own horn saying I'm always right. But I'm normally pretty on base with these things. And I don't say this lightly. So take it for what it's worth. That's how I feel about this team. And I expect them to continue to roll as the season goes on. The schedule might get tougher at points, but this team is going to show you that they are darn dominant, and I love it. So that's why you should follow us every day on Locked On Phillies so you can hear about the best team in baseball. So go ahead and make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all for today's episode. We will talk tomorrow about what happens in tonight's game and also preview the weekend series with the Nationals, another divisional tilt. But before that, let's try and take all 4 from the Mets, shall we? I love beating the Mets. All right, I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.